Welcome back. This is the Daily Brief. We're continuing to follow quite a number of live events and, of course, developing stories as they are happening. Like I'd mentioned to you, in part of its Nairobi's regeneration program, the Nairobi County government has this morning demolished some of the stalls at the Mtindo area. Those are the images coming to you live from that particular area. We shall be speaking to the residents there, mostly the businessmen and women who have depended on this area for their livelihoods, to just get a feel of what they say and to even find out what their notice had stated in regards to their demolition and what the county government intends. Also, in the meantime, we're expecting to cross over to Dankaburu shortly just to find out exactly what the Kenya Wildlife Service has to say about the 9 rhinos that lost their lives during the translocation process. Currently, they're showcasing some of the rhino horns there. Dankaburu will tell us exactly what that is all about. We're trying to get him ready for that particular update as well. Now, we're continuing to discuss matters current affairs, and I'm still holding my panel. We still have Martin Andati. We also have Philip Magal, as well as Bernard Wakoli. But even before we get to them, like I'd mentioned to you, joining me right now is former Kiambu Governor, Mr. William Kabogo. Thank you very much for joining us. Perhaps let's begin with the reaction to these particular images we're showing you on your screens shortly. What was this all about? And of course, brought about a lot of discussions as to why you had to see the former premier there. What was the kind of discussions that came from that? We're having them on the screens shortly.
There's really nothing special about meeting Raila Odinga.
Yeah.
Raila Odinga met with the president. They had a handshake, and they decided to work together. So over the years, Raila Odinga has been my friend. So as a follow-up of what they did with the president, I wanted to know what is this deal about, so that we know how do we deal with the rest of the nation.
So what exactly did you find out? Because there has been a lot of suspicion following the handshake.
Well, Kenyans are suspicious people all the time. It is sometimes important to take things from the face value. You've seen since the handshake, the country's temperature, political temperatures have cooled. And I think now Kenya should be on a roadmap to recovery, to greater progress. And then, in my view, there is nothing wrong of having a handshake. It was not only a handshake between myself and Raila Odinga. I also went to see Mudavadi. We had a chat. And I think it's important for leaders to now start thinking nationally about Kenya and not about themselves or their parties.
Was the handshake, from your opinion, an issue of dynasties coming together?
Well, that's an interpretation many people want to bring forth now, because Kenyans, again, we are politicians. All Kenyans are politicians. Why don't we just look at it as these are two very competing politicians? Since independence, their folks and everybody have been in competition. Why don't we just look at it now? It's time for Kenya to come together and grow together. Why are we suspicious about dynasties?
And a lot has happened.
In any case, even if we were to look at dynasties, how many more from the dynasty, so-called families, are available now for the next generation? I think none. Yes.
Does it make it an easier path, some say, for the Deputy President, William Ruto?
Why only the Deputy President? Does it make it easier for Kenyans? I don't think so. Okay. Everyone plays his part, and the best man wins.
Now, a lot has happened since that particular handshake. The war on graft seemingly has taken on course quite a lot. We've seen some high-level arrests, including principal secretaries all the way to senior officials from parastatals. What do you make of what has been happening?
What should follow now is people return the money they've stolen, and those who are found guilty should serve sentences. We should see them going to prison very soon. But I'm surprised if you look at today's paper. You will see some MPs are saying, no, this is now vendetta against the community. They are referring to Kenya Power, people who were arrested recently. And I didn't hear them say anything when NYS people were detained. They were detained for more than 12 days. But when their kingsmen, their tribesmen are detained for 3 days, it becomes an issue. That is simple nincompoops who are busy trying to protect the wealth.
Other than the members of parliament, your colleagues, formerly within the Council of Governors, have called for immunity similar to that of the president. And this is a reaction to the arrest of one suspect of Why do you think that came up?
Why would one seek immune from prosecution if you've stolen?
Is this something that you would have disagreed with if you were in office at the time?
What I would say, we have to separate issues. If one is guilty for having done something, you should be prosecuted. But you cannot go prosecuting a governor because somebody in the ward signed out an imprest, used the imprest and never returned. Then you want to take the governor to jail.
Did you see
what you will be implying
at
the same time, as you arrest a PS in the Ministry of probably Youth, you should be arresting the president. Is that what you're saying? These things need to be separated.
Did you see
if a governor has appended a signature on anything in the county and we have lost money, he should be taken to jail.
Was the arrest of Sospita Ojamong anything close to an inhumane act or rather political
witch hunt? Well, if it's true, the county lost 8-point-something million, and he appended his signature on that MOU, he has to face the music.
And that came in the midst of calls for lifestyle audit. What is your take on that?
Yesterday, it should have happened. We've been declaring wealth since, I think, 2010 or 2011. The purpose of declaring wealth is to create a measure. What did you have before you joined public service? What do you have now? And I hear people like Moore saying there's no basis in law of doing a lifestyle audit. It should continue. And this issue of lifestyle audit that you mentioned, Murkomen, seems to sort of be a bone of contention, especially for members of Jubilee. Why is this the case? Read between the lines. There is a story to every story. What is your story from My story is simple. There are people who have wealth they cannot account for. And this is the problem. And how do you explain before elections you are staying in Buruburu? You've stayed in Buruburu for the last 20 years. And all of a sudden, after you've gotten a position, you are living in a house in Karen worth 250 million. How do you explain how you got that house? Is it rocket science to be asked to say, how did you get it? You have a Rolex watch you didn't have before you became an MCA. Unless you can prove it was a gift, and you know we have a law. If you have been given a gift as a public servant that exceeds 20,000 shillings, you surrender that gift to government. And do you think the further call for lifestyle audit is likely to interfere with the operations of Jubilee? It will interfere with operations of thugs. Okay. Yes, because their thuggery will not continue. And if you refer to them as thugs, and if they might be in that particular party, what does it mean for the existence of the party? It means the party has to clean itself. Yes. And for this country to move forward, we have to get rid of corruption. We have to. And I'm saying this not because I'm out of office. I am ready for lifestyle audit today. Okay. Even those who are governors with me and they are outside, let them come for lifestyle audit. We know what we had. We have filled our forms before we joined office in 2013. So we should be able to account for whatever it is that we have. Okay, I'll come back to you, Mr. Kabogo, and before you also take questions from part of my panel here, let's now cross over to Dan Kaburu, who's at the Kenya Wildlife Service headquarters, joining us to give us an update in regards to the translocation process of the rhinos that actually led to the death of at least 9 of them. Dan Kaburu, this continues to be of international concern. What exactly does KWS have to say about this?
Thank you, Ian. We came here today for the display of the 18 horns from the 9 rhinos that died after they were translocated to Tsavo East National Park about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Now, the reason why we're here is because many Kenyans are asking themselves, where are these horns? And my cameraman can just give us a picture of the horns so they can make sure that the KWS says that these are the horns, and I'll also be talking to one of them to confirm to us that truly these are the horns that from the rhinos that were translocated to Tsavo East National Park. And I'm joined by Linus, who is the head of rhinos, to give us a brief of how the process was and to confirm whether these are the horns from the rhinos that perished, that died after the translocation. Karibu sana, Linus, and I'm sure thank you for joining us to give us a brief of the whole process. They were on Tuesday. We were here, and the CS confirmed that he will make sure that the horns are brought here for the press to see and for Kenyans to confirm that these are actually the horns from the rhinos that were translocated to Tsavo East National Park. Now, you can take us through how the process is and how it was.
Thank you. So, as you have said, during our interventions, when the animals are being translocated, we insert various gadgets to facilitate monitoring and also to be able to confirm that the animal, in case we lose the horns through any process, we can be able to positively identify the horn and from which animal it came from. So, for example, from the data sheet that you can see me holding is from the data sheet with the information of the rhinos that we were capturing, and in it you can be able to see that we have details here. If you can be able to see, so these are details of the microchips which were inserted in the horns of each and every animal that was translocated. So if you scan each and every horn with this scanner I'm holding here, you'll be able to identify each horn has a specific barcode, like you see this one is different for each of the 18 horns. So if you scan each one of them, you'll be able to identify that it belongs to different animals, and each animal has the 2 horns with different barcodes, as indicated in this data sheet of each of the animals that was translocated.
Now, okay, looking at the horns that we have here, many questions are abound from Kenyans that where are these horns going to be taken to? Maybe you can clear out that.
Okay, for now, they are going to be stored in a strong room because currently that is where we store them, because as you know, the horns don't have any value when they are not in the animal, so they are going to be stored in the strong rooms which are approved by the service.
Okay, thank you, Linus. That is a word from Linus, who is the head of rhinos here at KWS. He was involved so much in the translocation of these animals to Tsavo East National Park. Now, the questions about what caused their death is yet to be answered because investigations are still ongoing. On Tuesday, we had the CS for Tourism, Naju Balala, say he is going to involve the DCI into the whole process of investigating what caused the death of these animals, Ian. So for now, we cannot confirm as yet, because that's a question of everyone. It's a national, it's not just a Kenyan issue. It's an international concern that everyone would want to know what exactly happened. This is not the first translocation that has taken place of rhinos in this country. Between 2005 and 2017, about 149 rhinos were translocated to different parts of the country. And in those numbers, we only had 8 of them dying. So the question is, why this time that we had to lose so much? Because out of the 11 that had been translocated to Tsavo East National Park, 9 of them died, and the number was supposed to be 14, but the remaining 3 are not to be translocated as at now until we get to know the bottom of the matter of what actually happened and whether the environment that they're going to be in is okay. The question was answered whether there was a feasibility study done to ascertain whether the environment that these animals will be taken to, or the conservers that were supposed to be taken to, is safe for them to live in. So those are some of the questions, but we are going to keep us updated on what is happening, and when we get the report, which is expected maybe in the next 2 days, we'll get to let everyone know, every Kenyan know about it. Ian.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Dan Kaburu. The Kenya Wildlife Service says the chipping process, basically putting a GPS on the rhinos, did not lead to the death, and they said they followed due process as they have done before. So we shall keep you up to speed. Remember that investigations into that are still going on. Perhaps, Mr. Kabogo, you can comment on that. This was a process meant to, save these endangered species, but then 9 of them have actually lost their lives, unfortunately. Just a quick take on that.
I think it is difficult for me to comment because I don't have the statistics or the facts of how they were transported. But surely, losing 9 in one go, why didn't they think of, separating them and transporting them probably after every 3 months, a few after if you risk just a few of them.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, we're talking about matters corruption and fighting and the war on graft that there has been. Do you read political goodwill from government's part?
Well, it's never happened before. I mean, you can see serious cases in court. You can see the DPP saying he has another, I think, 17 files. So I think there's commitment now in government to fight corruption. Of course, corruption is not by private citizens, it's by people who serve government. So also this will cause problems within government.
Okay. Now let's go to the next session where I'd like my panel to actually engage you. Just a question from each of my panel, and I'll start with perhaps Bernard Okoli, who joins us as our political and current affairs analyst. Any question to the former governor here, Mr. Kabogo?
Okay, thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Former Governor, His Excellency.
First governor.
First governor of Kiambu. Yes. Okay, my question will be in reference to corruption, because since the inception of devolution, we have had so many cases of corruption being alleged on the part of governors. What did you do well, or where do you think is the main problem within the governance and the running of the county government?
I think the biggest problem as far as counties are concerned is records. If there are loopholes within the money management systems in a county, there will always be money stolen or theft of money, or in terms of procurement. And what I did, I digitized Kiambu County in the first 6 months. Even today, if you want to know, I hope the systems are still running. If you want to know what it is that we did in 2014, 2015, up to 2016, 2017, you should be able to know by a press of a button. You remember we had problems in the first year where people are saying, no, Kabogo is spending too much money buying computers, and it was a big case. It was a big story with MCAs. To them, it was buying computers. To me, it was digitizing the system. And we were able to move revenues from 700 million a year to 2.7 billion on the third year. So really, it's a matter of transparency, having systems, and of course, not manipulating systems for our own benefits. And I said yesterday, somewhere I was, if you want to cut down corruption in counties, stop cash transactions. Stop accounting officers from going to banks to withdraw huge amounts of money meant for interest, meant to pay MCAs, meant to pay, I don't know, clearing, meant to pay alcohol recovering citizens. Let there be an electronic way of transferring money to every individual. It may be expensive to send to every individual, you spend 70 shillings. But you will be able to account what you have done with this money. But once you send an officer to the bank and take 10 million, 2 million will go to whatever purpose, and 8 million in their pockets.
Thank you for that, Bernard. Philip, and then we finish with Martin before we take a short commercial break.
Mr. Kabogo, yes, it's an honor and a privilege to share the panel with you. So far, you've managed to answer most of the questions that I was interested in asking quite candidly and straightforward. But I have one more question. You lost the nomination to your rival, that is Waititu.
That word lost, you must use it carefully.
Yes, and that is my point exactly. You blamed it on the DP.
My response to that is very simple.
Yes. Do you still blame him for the loss?
You know, if I am totally honest,
yes,
I will blame everyone who was sitting
at the headquarters.
At the headquarters on the date they decided our nomination should be repeated. One, why were they repeated? What were the results of the first nomination? Why is it that they would not take complaints from us? When I went into that place, to see the DP was impossible. And for Kabogo to see the DP before was a matter of a phone call. I stayed out there for 3 hours waiting to see him, to tell him that we know that the list of those who are, and by the way, I'm not speaking bitter, I'm not bitter. I'm happy to be out as we speak. But the fact of the matter is, we complained about one side being given names to pick names of clerks and all these things. You remember the night of the nominations, the second nomination, we found the incumbent now in a school with ballot papers, and people locked themselves in using photocopy papers. And I called the headquarters and I said, are you using photocopies? They said, no, we are using seals. This is the deputy president who told me. We are using watermark ballot papers. So anyway, that is water under the bridge. If he was involved, I would not be able to say 100%. But tell me how you lose nominations. And a week before nominations, you were 70% ahead. And these are polls done by government, not done by Kabogo. But anyway, I have avoided to speak about nominations.
Okay.
We have to move forward.
Thank you. Martin, you have a final question to the former governor before we wrap this session up.
First of all, let me congratulate him. He did a good job as governor.
Asante.
Because the team he picked, most of those guys have been picked elsewhere, like the CEC Finance. She was immediately picked by Governor Ngilu. The CEC Health is in Nakuru, but the other day he was picked by KEMSA. And most of those guys, they did a very good job. But now the question is, if you had been re-elected, what is it that you will do differently? Because there were initially challenges the first year, which you said you fixed most of them. And if you look, because I do quite a bit of work in Kiambu, Machakos, and these counties around Nairobi, so you are able to know what is happening where. The systems were actually working. Now, if you had been re-elected, what issues would you address?
Believe you me, I'll tell you without fear of contradiction. I was hoping that once we are re-elected, by the end of the second term, we would have made Kiambu a self-relying county in terms of finances. If we were able to improve our finances to fourfold, and we had 3 or so sectors that we had not finalized, I'm sure we would have attained a 6 billion mark in terms of own revenue. And you cannot develop a county with the money that comes from the exchequer. It is never enough. So really, I'm not sure how it is now, but I'm sure by 2020, we would have made Kiambu self-reliant. With or without money from the exchequer, would have been able to develop Kiambu.
Okay, thank you for that, Martin, and of course, Mr. Kabogo. We're still retaining you until after the break. When we come back, we just talk about how exactly Kiambu County is doing and a bit of challenges that have been coming from that particular end. He will respond to that and, of course, a bit of questions on the online platform as well before we continue to follow other developing stories. This is a Daily Brief. We'll be right back.